do you maintain a culture? So you said like 15, 20 people, you've got touch points on all the sort of, when you're scaling quickly, you go 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever it is. There's a potential like 30 of them aren't bought into the culture. Maybe they're not. They're just there for a job. They're just not really interested in the culture. How do you maintain that culture and keep that enthusiasm to maintain those values throughout that many people?
I'd say having clear vision and purpose as an organisation, so people know what they're joining, and when they've joined, they sort of see that's clearly in action. I think having that. And like for us, we knew what we were and what we wanted to be and what we're trying to do for the clients. And I think as long as that's consistent, that's really important. It's a real sort of tricky one. Obviously, you're trying to attract and retain talent all the time. You're trying to obviously you've got to develop it. You've got to engage your staff. I think you've definitely got to have an employee engagement strategy, and we did.
Even at that time,
because even at that time, and nobody, you try and do all of the right things, and we had regular touch points with staff. We had some of the things that Block is still doing today. We implemented a long time ago before other organisations even thought about it, to make sure there's that constant input and sort of, I suppose, closed loop between you and the staff. So there's that trust. People can ask questions about how the business is doing. They can find that out, and this goes true for when I was at Tiger or anywhere else. You've got to try and keep that communications loop really open and be very sort of truthful and transparent with regards to what you're sort of telling the staff, especially nowadays, because you can't. There can be no sort of smoke and mirrors. Information is easy to provide, so you've got to be authentic in terms of your message and engaging with people. I'd say that's probably the most fundamental thing. And then your brand's really important to attract talent, but then you've got to do what you say you're going to do at the interview process. When you do attract the right people and you've run a good process, you've got to make sure that you live the values and the right behaviours when they have joined, and make sure you develop people as well. And I think things have moved on now, especially from a sales perspective, where the market certainly changed, and I've seen that change when I was in my role at Tiger in the last few years. It's a lot more difficult now.
So let's go on to that, John. I know I ranted at lunch a lot about it, but I'm interested in your thoughts on this because, and it's something close to my own heart around attracting, recruiting, retaining, engaging candidates into your business. How difficult was it at Block, and how do you find difficult is it now to actually get the right talent into your business and actually keep them there? Because and I'll give you a bit of context to that, because what I'm seeing now is since the pandemic, and maybe when you were recruiting from Block, it might be a bit more easier to attract and retain. I think it's very, very difficult now for companies to do that, because there is a lot of smoke and mirrors. There is a lot of people putting out posts saying, we're fantastic, we're this, we're that, we've won this award, we have ping pong tables, we don't work Fridays, we pay £1 million. Loads of stuff going on, and it's out there in the ether and everyone's seeing it. And your employees are seeing it. Your employees at Block were seeing it, your employees who are at Tiger are seeing it. So how hard is it now to attract talent, and what do you sort of do to actually maintain and attract talent for your own business and retain it?
Yeah, so you asked me firstly around Block. I think still a lot of the same challenges existed then, especially if you was very focused on the type of people that you wanted in your organisation and the type of people you didn't want to have in your business. I think that's to say, if you've got and I'm not talking about everybody's cookie cutter here and everybody's the same personality. I'm making sure that everybody lives and understands the values of the business. You get some reciprocation back from the candidate that they're going to align with those. They're demonstrating the right types of behaviour in terms of how they're asking, giving examples at interview, that type of stuff. I'm not talking about everybody needs to be the same. But that's difficult anyway. It's always been difficult for sales. I say sales was the number one challenge recruiting at Block, probably still is. And get better in mind the current market, which we spoke about. And then technical people I'd say less challenging, but still difficult. I'd say it was still a very good market when I was working at Block from a technical perspective, where you had anybody that had a senior sort of Cisco qualification, for instance, would be regularly contacted weekly, daily from recruiters with new opportunities. So it was important that how you behaved as a business and created that sort of team culture. That was so important in the retentions, in retaining staff.
Do you think it's harder now because, like I said, maybe for instance, maybe when you were at Block, they might have been getting attracted by recruiters, but maybe LinkedIn wasn't as prevalent then. It might have been not as hot. Now LinkedIn, you go on LinkedIn now, recruiters advertising, internal recruiters advertising, companies advertising, companies saying how brilliant they are, companies, internal recruiters contacting your staff all the single time. And if you're not doing everything you can to maintain, you're almost falling behind all the time. So how hard is it, do you feel now? Let's say Block. Let's say for instance at Tiger, how hard is it, do you think, to sort of attract people and retain them, and knowing that they're going to be poached all the time, and knowing that the power's completely shifted to the candidate?
Well, it has, hasn't it? And you've got a candidate sort of sparse market, haven't you? And so you've got a lot of employers what need that. Obviously, technology is doing well globally, not just in the UK. There's a lot of investment, so there's a lot of technology companies gunning for growth, right? So you've got all these investors, and they want a return on their money. So they've got there's a lot of investment and a push going into technology to grow sales teams and grow sales numbers. So and then you've got the candidate sparsity, especially I say at the quality end, the ones that are able to sort of really sort of consult with the client, understand their requirements, really care about what they're selling to the clients as well, and identify who those candidates are. So I think that's where employers have got a huge problem now, and they've also got the problem around. You said like LinkedIn, it can be a PR machine.
Yeah,
it absolutely can be a PR machine. And you and Joe spoke about CSR and everything else that goes with that, and the culture that you're trying to sort of communicate to the outside world. Often, and I'm not saying this is always the case, but there's often that's the best version of the culture and everything that's getting communicated out.
Definitely the best.
Yeah. And when you get into the reality of it, it can be nowhere near. Often it is somewhere close, but it's not necessarily the same. And you've got all of these companies trying to make sure that they've got, like I say, all the charitable boxes ticked, and they're posting every week around what that means, so that they're attracting the sort of the younger talent. And I'm not saying that I would be attracted by that myself, but it's certainly a tick box for younger talent. The whole corporate social responsibility, everything else that goes with that, and it's trying to, for candidates, they've got to work their way through the myriad of which are the best employers that I actually want to work with, or just accept that they're going to get contacted by them all. And then as an employer, you've got to compete with exactly what I've just described: candidate sparsity and 20, 30 employers going for the same candidate as you that compete in your space. And how are you going to stand out from that? So that's why that's why it's a constant now, because you can't afford to drop off in that area, because if you do, you're nowhere to be seen. You're not going to attract any of the talent.
How long would you wait if you were looking for talent? We spoke about this. There's a sparsity of talent. There's a war for talent. Everyone's trying to find the same people. You want to stick to the values of the core business. You're looking for people, then don't quite match it, and you're looking. How long do you wait? Because I'm seeing now vacancies go open 6, 8, 9, 10 months, a year. Some people are still looking a year from last year for the same. They couldn't quite fit it right. How long would you sort of think, or you'd give advice to sort of leaders to wait? Because it can be a never-ending line of string. You don't know how long you could be waiting for the moment to find the perfect candidate. There's no such thing as the perfect candidate.
Yeah, well, you've got the investor or the CEO or the chairman or the board putting pressure on the number. So while you've got the pressure on the number, you're going to be under constant pressure as a sales director to, if we're talking about sales, which I think we are, how are you going to deliver the number? And if a recruitment process has been going on for 3 to 6 months, that's a huge sort of burden for a sales director to take, and holding his nerve to make sure he's getting the right candidate that's going to fit into his team and have the right sort of mentality that the customers are going to engage with as well, for instance. So there's all of those things to consider. The advice I'd give is wait as long as you dare. It's because it's. I think it's if you identify a candidate on January the 1st to actually bring on board, and it takes you till end of the year to find them, that's a much better solution than taking the plunge in April, and then you're spending 6, 9, 12 months of your time onboarding them, trying to make them successful and embed them into your sales team, and then they leave.
Yeah. So
you're back in the year after, looking at a recruitment process, probably 15 or 18 months later, filling exactly the same role. And it's so difficult, and it is difficult. I don't envy any. I think sales director is probably the trickiest position at the moment in technology to actually operate.
I feel sorry for the employers at the moment, because I feel the shift. I mentioned this to you, the shift to the candidate has gone too far. It's gone so far now that the candidate knows that they've got lots of opportunities. They know they can make, in some ways, unreasonable demands around hours, around pay, around commission structures, around car allowances, around working locations. I told you that there was a candidate that asked to work at 6 weeks in Marbella. And was, but this was for a client. They asked to work for 6 weeks in Marbella and thought that was reasonable without taking any holiday. How far is this? How far do you think this is going to go? Because I've got my own opinion on it, that it's in the last 6 months, a year, it's gone too far. I believe that. I believe the candidate now. Excuse my French. It's just a piss take now. They will just say any demands they can, because every company is desperate for staff. Every channel firm is desperate for staff, and every candidate is being seduced and romanced by internal recruiters, hiring managers, sales directors. So they know they've got the cherry picks. They know they can make unreasonable demands, and they're getting them, John. They're getting unreasonable demands. So how far do you think this could go?
I think I'd draw the line at Marbella. For sure.
They're currently out there. Actually, it's probably the 6 weeks will start now. So they're not coming back till September.
Yeah, obviously, there's. I think there's the pandemic. I think is, in many ways, I suppose, opened people's eyes to what a different way of working could be like for them. And I think for employers, that's really challenging. I think you talked about it in a previous episode around the likes of Softcat, that we used to sort of aspire to emulate from a cultural perspective, and not copied a lot of what they did, but you took on board some of their ideas. I was good friends with Martin Hellawell at the time, and it was a great sort of source of information for helping me and Mark as well, with advice, and you just that's sort of what sort of drove us to sort of build that sort of great place to work. But it's all under compromise at the moment, isn't it? It's because people feel like, I've worked during the pandemic like this. Why couldn't I work like this full time? And I think it's going obviously to the other way now. We spoke about it again, the 4-day working week and all of that type of stuff. It's how far can it go? And I think in smaller businesses, you do need those regular touch points. And how we come to think about it at Tiger, and we had some sort of the leadership team was unanimous that we needed people in the office at least on a periodic basis. I think it comes down to the type of work that you're doing. If you're doing a document and you're writing a proposal document for a tender, and you've got 3,000 or 4,000 words to write, of course it makes sense to sit at home in your study. Yeah. But if you're working on a project or trying to come up with a new idea to solve a particular problem with your team, where's the best place to solve that? On Zoom or Microsoft Teams, or in an office with a whiteboard? I'd say the latter. And I think that's where probably the message needs to be sort of nurtured a little bit through different leaders. Is it's the type of work that you're doing that's important, not necessarily what your working hours are and where you work from. It's doing the right thing for the company, for the work that you're doing.